Hey man, we're gonna have some fun if that's okay with y'all. If we haven't had the chance to meet yet, my name is Campbell. I normally don't sound like this. I've been sick all week. Yeah, it's the worst. And my wife wasn't home this weekend, and so I was lonely. And so I'm running on a diet of four cough drops and some water and some tea. So we'll see how far that gets us today. But you know what? I'm young. I have good health insurance, and so I'm gonna do everything I can today. It's gonna be good. But like I said, if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Campbell. I get the opportunity of serving on our staff team. I kind of have two jobs. So my first job is I am our high school director, and then I am also the college and young adults director, which is super fun. Hey, thank you. Thank you, Kate. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for today. I think it's gonna be really fun because I think a lot of y'all, if you're totally honest, you only know me from things like announcements or standing in the lobby at a table and you have to walk past me and not look at me because you don't want to talk to me. And so I was thinking and I was like, I am so much more than that, you know? And so what I did, like anybody does, is with our high school group, we have a team called the Student Leadership Team. And so this is high schoolers that want to grow in their faith, in their leadership, just learn a little bit more. So we meet before students every single week, and so I've gotten to know them really well. They've gotten to know me really well. So I asked them to make a slideshow to introduce me to y'all, okay? So again, this is a bunch of high schoolers. I had not looked at it until the 8:30 service. And so I told them, I'm like, make it as memey as possible, like whatever it needs to look like, it needs to look like. And so here we go. So student leadership team is going to introduce me to y'all. So here we go. All right, introduction to Campbell. That is me. All right, great. Campbell loves food. I do. See, I am a little offended if they're calling me fat, but I can address that later. So next up, I do love food. That is true. I love to cook, do everything else. What else about me? Campbell loves Gabby. I do. Yes, I do love Gabby. And Gabby loves Campbell. I hope so. So this is my wife, Gabby. This is us on a plane in Honduras, which is really cool. Let's see what else. Again, I don't really remember. Campbell randomly spawns everywhere. That's true. This is the senior. We went on a senior trip about a month ago, and we had to all get in a bunch of cars to drive, and I didn't have my cars. But if you're a police officer, please ignore this. I have a seatbelt on. You just can't see it. All right, next one. All right, I'm serious. He's everywhere. Yeah, that's true. That's me in the back of the truck. That was winter weekend. It was pretty cold, but I was pretty warm. Awesome. Continuing. Fun facts about Campbell. Here we go. He went to I don't know why the E is capitalized, but anyway, went to Northeastern University in Boston. That is true. I did. I showed up late to students because he only shaved half his face. That is true. That's a true story. So what happened a couple weeks ago is I was shaving right before students. I was like, great, I have enough time. And my razor died. Died. And so I had to go to Target, got the razor from Target, came to students, did SLT, and then shaved the other half of my face afterward. And so that was fun. I did live in Atlanta. He loves the soccer team Brighton. I do. Come on, Charge for Europe. We won yesterday. Let's go. Most of y'all are like, what is that? He knows everyone. I don't really think I know everyone, but I appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see what else we got. That is me in high school. Let's go. Senior year. Now everyone flame him for not putting a senior quote. Campbell still thinks he's in high school. I do. They call me Unc. I'm like, I'm only 26. I'm not that much older than you guys, you know? But they think I'm old, so whatever. All right, is that it? No, one more. I think we got one more. Yeah, one more. Here we go. Anyway, Campbell loves his job, and you should ask him about it because he loves Jesus and would love to tell you about him. Amen. Come on, can we thank our student leadership team? That was amazing. Yeah. That's true. I do love my job, so thank you for allowing me to get to do this. It's been so much fun. But the reason I wanted to do that is because the person we're going to talk about today, he's known for kind of one thing in his life, but he's really so much more than that. And so just like me, how you may know me from the announcements or the table in the lobby, I also have a lot more going on than that, right? And so does the person we're talking about today. And so if you've been with us the last couple weeks, we talked about the journey up until Easter. And then Pastor Trey did such a good job last week walking us through the Easter story. And we've talked about a bunch of different people, right? But I want you to think about specifically, has there ever been a time in your life where you have had an honest, deep question that you wanted to ask God? And I want you to, not just an honest question, but the type of question where you're like, man, I don't even really know if I can ask that just because it feels almost too honest. Because for me, I think about 2019 in the fall was my second semester of college, second year of college, so I was a sophomore. And I had spent the summer interning at a church in Miami. And I had this incredible experience at this church in Miami. I grew more than I've ever grown in my entire life. I learned a ton. I was seeing God move in incredible ways. And I got back to Boston because, again, I went to Northeastern University. And while I was there, I was convinced, dude, like, we're going to see God change my campus. We're going to see God change Boston. Like, I really felt called here and was like, this is going to be insane. I can't wait to see what happens. But when I got back, it ended up being one of the hardest semesters I had in college because I had decided to live away from my 4 best friends, thinking it would be a good decision, but ended up just making me super lonely. My college pastor, unfortunately, just wasn't great at the time. He had a lot going on, so I didn't really have anybody looking out for me or caring for me. And then, like, the small groups and stuff wasn't blowing up like I thought it would. And so I got back, and I found myself, I was like, God, like, why? What am I doing here? Like, I remember one time I went on a walk at, like, 9 p.m. just to feel something, right? Like, that's, like, how down bad I was. I was just in a really tough place and questioning God. I just had this amazing summer. You did incredible things. Like, what is going on? And I feel like most of us, if we're honest, we've been in that situation before where we're just left wondering where God is in our situation. We're left asking God, what are you doing? And sometimes it can feel like we're not allowed to ask those questions. It's almost like we're not allowed to be honest with God. But the guy I want to talk about today, he actually went through something similar to that. And so, as we've been talking about, Jesus had these 12 best friends, these 12 disciples that followed him while he was doing ministry on earth. And of these 12, we hear about Peter a lot, right? Like April did such a good job in February walking us through the Peter being reinstated. And then we've talked about John, and he was a great church leader too. But the disciple I want to talk about today, we don't talk about a ton. But here's the thing, what's interesting, you probably heard of him. You've probably heard this term before, but didn't realize it came from the Bible. Today, we're going to be talking about somebody called Doubting Thomas. Doubting Thomas. Now, if you're a little bit older, again, not in high school or young adults, you probably heard people call someone like a Doubting Thomas, right? Don't be a Doubting Thomas. Don't be a Doubting Thomas. Why are you being a Doubting Thomas? And maybe you never realized that this term came from the Bible. And so, Thomas, he was one of Jesus' 12 disciples. And we honestly don't know a ton about him, but we hear about him a little bit after Jesus' resurrection. And so what had happened is, like Trey left us with last week, Jesus rose from the tomb. He immediately appeared to Mary, and then the disciples are kind of left trying to figure out what's going on. And so the disciples, they're locked in a room together because they're afraid that somebody's going to come and find them and arrest them and kill them. And so they're terrified. They have no idea what to do. This guy that they put their faith in and followed for 3 years that they thought they were going to be following their entire life, all of a sudden isn't here anymore. And so they're left questioning, what do we do? What are we doing? And they're terrified. So they lock themselves in an attic, and this is where we find them. And so this is what's happening. So on the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this is verse 20, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. And so, like I said, Jesus had at this point appeared to a woman named Mary, who was, again, really close with Jesus. And so the disciples, they would have heard these stories and these rumors that Jesus was back. But up until this point, they have not seen him yet. And so imagine how happy they were when Jesus comes walking through the door. I mean, it had to feel like winning the Super Bowl or a national championship or getting married or having a kid for whatever, right? Whatever, like, if you could think the biggest moment in your life, this has to be what it felt like. Yet in this huge celebration, there's one notable person missing. This is what it says in verse 24. Now, Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. And so we don't know what Thomas was doing. Maybe he was out getting groceries or something, or he missed the memo and went on a walk or something like that. I don't know what he was doing, right? Thomas wasn't in the room. But he gets back, and the disciples are losing their mind, and he has to be so confused, being like, why are you excited? Like, Jesus just died. This isn't something we should be celebrating. And I don't know about you, but I would have felt pretty left out if I was Thomas. I would have been like, Jesus, like, I thought you cared about me and loved me. Like, why did you choose to show up when I wasn't there? And I think a lot of us, again, if we're just being totally honest, we felt this way at different points in our life. And maybe you're feeling this way now, where last week at Easter, you heard of God doing incredible things in other people's lives. You hear God blessing people and coming through for people. Yet you look at your own life, and it almost feels like God is choosing to not be a part of it. Almost feels like God is choosing to not showing up. What do we do when we're there? Well, we'll see what Thomas does. So Thomas walks in, hears that Jesus appeared, and this is what he says. Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. And so Thomas immediately lets them know. He's like, dude, unless I see Jesus, I'm not going to believe that he actually came. And so this is where we get this term doubting Thomas from, because it actually seems like he's doubting. He's saying, I'm not going to believe unless I see him. But here's what's so interesting, and honestly what makes me so mad, because this is not right, is earlier, just 5 chapters earlier in verse 20, this is what happens with the disciples. So Jesus shows up, shows them his hand in his side, and the disciples were overjoyed when they saw him, his hands in his side. Thomas just asked to see the same thing that the disciples saw. And he gets flamed for it. It's not fair. He's called doubting Thomas. We don't call him the doubting disciples, right? Like, that's not fair. That's not right. He just wants to see the same thing that his friends saw. And the reason it's so important is because last week we talked about how Jesus was nailed to the cross, right, in his hands, but also he was pierced by a sword in his side to see if he was still alive or not. So that's why these are so important, because to them, it would signify that this actually is the same Jesus that died on the cross. So all he's saying is, dude, I just want to see what you saw. And so to understand Thomas better, I think we need to go back a little bit and talk about the only other 2 times Thomas is mentioned in the Gospels, right? And so Thomas is mentioned 9 chapters earlier in John 11. And what's happening here is the disciples are talking with Jesus, and Jesus wants to travel to a town called Bethany. Now, here's the thing about Bethany, is there were people in Bethany who wanted to kill Jesus, because Jesus at this point had gotten really popular, and he was kind of a threat to the religious leaders at the time. And so they wanted to do something about it. They wanted to arrest him. They wanted to kill him. And so the disciples are terrified that if they travel to Bethany, they're going to die. They're terrified if they travel to Bethany, they're going to get arrested. But here's the thing. Nobody wants to tell Jesus about it. They're just talking to each other about it. Except for one person. I'll let you guess who tells. Thomas says, let us also go that we may die with him. So Thomas is the only one willing to be honest with Jesus. And not only that, he's not only the one willing to be honest, he's also willing to go die with Jesus. He says, Jesus, hey, we feel like we're going to die if we go with you to Bethany, but if that's true, we'll do it. You see how insane this is? We don't call him brave Thomas. We don't call him courageous Thomas. We don't call him ready to go die with Jesus Thomas, but he's doubting Thomas. It doesn't make any sense. And again, a couple chapters later in John 14, what's happening is Jesus is preparing the disciples, his closest friends, again, for what we just talked about, and kind of preparing the way. And Easter is that he's going to have to die, and he's going to be resurrected, but then he's going to leave, but it's going to be better for them. So he starts saying crazy stuff, right? He starts saying stuff like, I'm going to go to my Father's house. And the disciples are like, Jesus, we know your dad. Like, we know where the house is. Why don't we just go? Like, I'm confused. And then he's also like, I'm preparing a place for you. And they're like, Jesus, we don't see you building anything. Like, what do you mean? I'm really confused by that. So the disciples are in this place where they're confused. But here's the thing. I'll let you guess what's happening. They're only talking to each other about it. Except for one person is honest with Jesus. Again, I'll let you guess who it is. Thomas says this. Here we go. Lord, we do not know where you are going, so how can we know the way? Thomas is just being direct. He's like, Jesus, we have no idea what you're talking about. Can you please tell us, because we want to go with you? And again, we see Thomas's honesty, and we see him fully committed to following Jesus wherever he goes, because he's asking questions so he can follow him. So again, I don't think the term doubting Thomas is helpful, because it doesn't seem like it reflects Thomas's life. Here's what I think we should call him. Not doubting Thomas. I think he should be honest Thomas. Honest Thomas. Because he's not doubting in these moments. That doesn't seem to be how he actually is 100% of the time. It just seems like he's the only one willing to be honest, willing to tell Jesus what is actually going on. And so now let's go back to what we were talking about with the disciples were locked in the room. Jesus appears, Thomas gets there, Jesus is gone. And so a week later, the disciples are still locked in the room. So they're still terrified. They're still scared of what's going to happen. They're still not sure what's going on. So they're in this room together, and we read about what happens. So this is later on in verse 26. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Verse 27, then he said to Thomas, this is really important, he goes straight to Thomas, and he says, "Put your finger right here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Now here's what I want you to see. Jesus goes directly to Thomas. Thomas doesn't have to tell Jesus anything because Jesus already knows what Thomas is feeling. And he goes directly to him. And here's what please understand this. Sincere faith does not eliminate sincere investigation. Sincere faith does not eliminate sincere investigation. We are allowed to have questions. We are allowed to have doubts at times. All Jesus wants from us is to be honest with him. Because again, Jesus is never going to be mad at us when we seek clarity from him. Because in this moment, he does not show up to Thomas and get mad at him. He does not show up to Thomas and be like, "Thomas, what are you doing?" And I think we have this own bias in our mind that if we were honest with Jesus, he would be mad at us. Because when we read something like "stop doubting and believe," we think that's Jesus being mad at him. I don't think it is. I don't think Jesus kicks down the door and is like, "Where's Thomas?" Right? First off, he walks through the door, the door's not even open, but he walks through the door because he's sick like that. And he walks through the door, and he walks directly to Thomas and is just like, "Thomas, here I am. Stop doubting and believe." But I think so much of us, whether you've grown up in the Southeast and kind of the church culture down here or the Northeast with the Catholic Church, no shade against either of those, but I know sometimes it can create in us this bias that God is just mad at us all the time. Or we have to present this mask to God for him to be happy with us. But that's not true. It's not true because of this. Jesus invites us into an honest faith. He invites us into an honest faith, and we see that with Thomas. He doesn't show up and ask Thomas to be somebody else. He doesn't show up and ask Thomas to change anything. All he does is be like, "Dude, I'm here. Just stop doubting. You don't need to doubt." And Thomas has an awesome response. He sees Jesus and he immediately just says, "My Lord and my God." He immediately sees him and he's back to genuine faith. Because again, I don't think he's genuinely doubting. I just think he's hurt. This man he thought he was going to be following for the rest of his life died. That's hard. He felt like God showed up to his friends but didn't show up in his own life. That's hard. He's just hurt. He's just sad. And through Thomas, Jesus actually gives us hope. This is verse 29. And Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." And so that's us. We haven't physically seen Jesus. Yeah, we're blessed because we believe without physically seeing him. And so again, Jesus invites us into an honest faith, and it's clear through Thomas's life. So I think there's three kind of more specific things we can learn through Thomas's life that can help us in our faith. So number one, the first thing I want to talk about is to authentically follow Jesus. Authentically follow Jesus. So again, Thomas was honest with Jesus about where he was at. He didn't try to perform. He didn't try to be somebody else. He didn't try to do something to impress Jesus. He was just honest. He told him how he was feeling. And we're invited into that same thing. And I think for us, it can be hard to be honest with God. And I know for me, for most of my life, I kind of felt that way. But recently, about a year ago, Gabby and I kind of had to learn to be really honest with God. And so we were living in Atlanta, and we were loving what we were doing. We loved Atlanta. I know that might sound crazy to some of y'all, but we loved it. We were working with a bunch of people our age. I was working with some of my best friends. The church we were a part of was doing incredible things. It was just awesome. We were like, this is so cool. If you would have asked me in high school, it would have been like a dream job to be at this place. But what we kind of realized over time, and as we were a little honest with ourselves, is we kind of realized how we were living probably wasn't necessarily the healthiest thing for us. And it wasn't like Gabby and I were doing great. We were loving life. We were married for about a year. It was the best. It was so awesome. And but we were working like 5 to 6, or more like 7, honestly, like days/nights a week, working like 60 to 70 hours. Like, it was crazy. And we just kind of realized, like, man, is this really how we want to live our life? You know, like, this is fun for now, but is this what we want to do moving forward? And kind of around that same time, it was literally about a year ago, Eric kind of reached out about this opportunity coming back to Wellspring, and my first, kind of response was like, never. I'm never doing that. Because I didn't, a little bit about my story, I went to high school here and left and was like, never coming back. And here I am. And so we were kind of processing, and the more we talked to Eric and the team, we were kind of like, okay, I could see it. Seems like they're really healthy. Seems like they have good rhythms. This is something we want to be a part of. And as we were honest with God, we kind of started to realize this was our next step. And I think the reason we realized this was our next step is because we were honest with God about what we were feeling. We were honest with God about where we were. And I think for a lot of us, we can really stress about what our next step is. But I think what's kind of preventing us sometimes is we're not doing the work of being honest with God about how we're doing or our desires or anything like that. And so again, we're called to authentically follow Jesus. And this is hard. Like, I get it. Like, I know we feel like we have to put on a mask to impress God or put on a mask to impress our friends so they're not disappointed. Like, I see this with, some of my young adult guys all the time is we have an awesome Bible study, but it can still be hard to be fully honest and fully transparent with people because there's fear of judgment, there's fear of guilt. Like I said, when you grow up, you might have this view of God that he's going to be upset with you, he's going to be mad at you, he's going to be frustrated with you. But again, Jesus invites us into an honest faith. You don't have to put on a front. You don't have to put on a mask. You don't have to try to be this person for God to be happy with you, because Jesus invites us into an honest faith. Now, the second thing I think we can learn is to obediently follow Jesus. To obediently follow Jesus. And so Thomas does this when he follows Jesus to Bethany, right? Remember we talked about that, how if they went to Bethany, they felt like they were going to die, felt like they were going to get arrested, felt like something bad was going to happen to them. But Thomas was willing to go no matter what. No matter what happened, Thomas was willing to go. And he was obedient because authenticity, being honest with God, leads to obediently following Jesus. And again, it can be so hard for us to obediently follow Jesus. Because if you're a parent, you've got kids, and life gets crazy, and you got to take them to 8 different things all the time, and you got to manage their schedules and figure out where they're going. Dude, I get that. That's a lot. We have a bunch of stuff competing for our attention. If you're in high school, I know a lot of y'all do like travel sports. You're traveling a lot, or you're doing, travel sports and your school sports, and you're taking like college classes. And I'm like, why? That's a lot. Just like have fun, And so there's just a lot competing for your attention. So it can be really hard to obediently follow Jesus. But what I learned about this, and again, I'm not perfect at this by any means, I'm just telling you what I've kind of learned, is something that helped me to be authentic with Jesus so that I could obediently follow him, was in 2022, it was a really hard time for me because I moved from Boston to Atlanta, which are 2 very different places. And I moved from Boston to Atlanta to work at this church in Atlanta. And I was moving, and I didn't know anybody, right? I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything really about Atlanta. I'd only driven through it a bunch of times. That's all that I kind of knew. So I was moving to Atlanta. I was living by myself after living with 4 of my best friends. And it was just super lonely. Again, really hard time. And on top of that, the job that I was in was kind of hard, and there were a lot of expectations on me that kind of made me feel weird. And then I got to the fall, and I found out in August that my parents were getting a divorce. My parents were splitting up. And it felt like my world was crashing down on me, and it felt like my family was falling apart, because it literally was. And so what ended up happening is I had gone to somebody at church and been like, dude, I really need to talk to somebody. Can you get me plugged into counseling? And they got me plugged in with this guy named Burke. His name is Burke Buster. It's like, I still don't think it's a real name. To this day, I've never seen Burke and an angel in the same place together. And so I'm fully convinced Burke is an angel, or I don't know. That's not biblical. Please don't quote me on that. That's just how I feel. And so Burke was so helpful. Like, he literally was like the guy for me. And he taught me something that totally changed my life and really helped me with this, right? So what he taught me is he said, Campbell, this is what I want you to do. I do this all the time, and I think it would be helpful for you. He says, Campbell, I want you to, while you're in your car, go get a coffee, while you're sitting at your desk, whatever, imagine Jesus is sitting right next to you. And I just want you to talk to him like you would talk to a friend. I just want you to talk to him and be honest with him like you would a friend. And as I started to do that, I kind of started to realize Jesus in my life. And what I kind of started to realize was God is like this lamp. And if you're kind of type A, you're like, why has this lamp been up here the entire time and he hasn't addressed it? Which I'm not like that. My wife is like that. She's like, talk about the lamp. I realized God is like this lamp. And here's what I mean by that. Is I've been up here the entire time, and this lamp has been on. It doesn't matter whether I'm thinking about it. It doesn't matter whether I'm over here talking to y'all or over here talking to y'all. It doesn't matter whether I'm looking at it, whether I'm not thinking about it, whether it's not even close to something on my mind. This lamp is on. And I realized the same way God has been present in my life the entire time. Whether I've been thinking about him, whether I've been talking to him, whether I've been honest with him, he's been right here the entire time. And I think a lot of us, we don't really understand this, but really what he's looking for is he's just looking for us to sit down and talk to him. He just wants us to sit down and talk to him and be honest with him and imagine he's sitting right here. And I think a lot of us, again, if we're being totally honest, we feel like we have to sit here and try to be a lamp to impress God. We sit here and we think we have to be a certain way, we have to do a certain thing, we have to appear a certain way in order for God to want to talk to us. But that's not true. He's been here the entire time with his seat pulled up, just waiting for you to come and talk to him. And here's the cool thing. When you start to talk to him, when you start to be honest and authentic with him, it leads to obedience. Here's what happens. You start to talk to God about the things that you're going through, so you start to understand why you went through the things that you went through. Because for me, I moved here in high school. It was really hard. I realized the reason that I moved here was so that God could help me understand that he loves me and that ministry might be a thing for me. Then I moved to Boston, and again, didn't really understand, but I realized it helped me talk to people who don't know Jesus and gave me some of the best friends in my life. Then I go to Atlanta, meet my wife, praise God, and on top of that, I learned that ministry is like the number one thing for me. And like, it's what I love to do and got to see it done at a super high level. And then I moved back to Myrtle Beach, and I'm sitting here wondering why I'm here. But really what God wants me to understand is I can't do anything without him. I've been trying to do stuff without him. Ministry, something people would say was great, but doing it in my own strength and not relying on him. But that only comes from talking to him. And again, he doesn't want you to be a lamp. He doesn't want you to be him. He doesn't want you to appear a certain way. He wants you to be you. Because here's the thing, it's not about what we do. It is about everything that he did for us. So we can be honest with him. He invites us into an honest faith. And here's the cool thing. Obediently following Jesus leads to boldly following Jesus. Because here's what's cool. About Thomas, we only hear about him one more time after Jesus appears to him. What we see is he's a leader in the early church, and that's the last thing we hear about him. But thankfully, we have things called like church tradition, where the church has told stories for so many years. And what we learn is Thomas took the gospel to what is now modern-day India. He goes to modern-day India, and he's preaching the good news to everybody, telling them about everything that Jesus did. And he gets killed, he gets martyred for preaching what he believes in. Now, here's the thing. I don't know about you. I am not dying for anything I am doubting. That doesn't sound like a doubter to me. Because here's what happens. Thomas realized honest faith led to authentic faith, which led to obedience, which led to following Jesus, because you'd seen how he's moved through your entire life. And once you've seen how he's moved through your entire life and you've seen everything he's done for you, then you boldly follow him. You do what he asks you to do. You serve him. And man, it can be so easy in our like American church culture to just come to church, consume it, come like halfway into the first or second song, leave through after the last song, like whatever. And dude, there's no judgment. I get it, I get it. But Jesus wants so much more for you than that. This is not just a Sunday thing. This is not just a check in the box off. This isn't just to make your parents happy. This isn't just to come with your friends or whatever. Like, Jesus invites you into an honest faith. He wants to get to know you. He does. And again, Gabby and I are living this out now. There are days where it's really hard to be in Myrtle Beach, if I'm being totally honest with you. We miss our friends. We miss having a city and stuff to do and like coffee shops, you know? Not a ton of coffee shops here. But we believe Jesus wants us here. And I don't know about you. I'm not interested in doing anything with my life that is not God's best for my life. I'm not. And again, we don't get it right all the time. I'm so bad at this. I'm super messed up, trust me. You get to know me and you'd be like, wow. But the point is that if God can use me, he can use you, for sure. And I don't think you realize that, but you need to hear that. And he invites you into an honest faith. And so kind of my challenge, what I want to leave you with is, if Jesus invites us into an honest faith, like, have you ever been honest with him? Because I would guess, and again, this is just me guessing. I don't know all of you, unfortunately. I would love to. But I don't think most of us have ever been truly honest with Jesus about some of the things that we're going through. And he invites us into an honest faith. And so we're going to take some time. I'm going to pray in a little bit. Our prayer team's going to be up. And man, I'd encourage you, come talk to one of our prayer team members about maybe something you need to be honest with Jesus about. But more specifically, and this is an actual challenge, this isn't just a way for me to end my talk, I want you this week to find some time, and whatever you're doing, it could be you're at one of like the 3 coffee shops we have, or you're stretching before a game, or you're at the beach, or you're, just hanging out at home doing your daily office in the morning. I want to encourage you to sit there and imagine like Jesus is sitting next to you. And I want you to be honest with him. And I want you to talk to him about the things that you have on your mind and the things that you're going through. Because I promise you he can take it. And he invites us into an honest faith. So why would we not be honest with him? Y'all pray with me. Jesus, thank you so much for today. Thank you so much that our faith is all about what you've done for us and not about what we can do for you. Jesus, would you help us be honest with you? There's so many things that compete with our attention or compete with our ability to be honest. But Jesus, would you give us the strength to do so? I ask that you give us confidence. I ask that you give us clarity to be honest with you. And Jesus, I ask that honesty would lead to authenticity, thus being real to you and the people around us. I ask that it would lead to obedience with us following you with everything that we have, and then following you into taking the next step to do whatever you're calling us to do. Thank you for this church. Thank you for a safe space to learn more about you. I ask that you be with us this week. Help us have a great week.